I grew up in the 70s. I grew up with Bigfoot being on TV, In Search Of with Leonard Nimoy and the $6 Million Man. That's one of the things I wanted people to take away from this movie is, yes, critical thinking only benefits the Bigfoot community. It doesn't harm it in any way. It keeps it respected and authentic. I released a trailer that opens with Orson Welles, and he's standing there in a black hat, and he says, "Ladies and gentlemen, by way of introduction, this is a film about trickery and fraud and lies." And then it cuts to the trailer. So there's an Easter egg right there that tells you everything. Use of critical thinking will keep the Bigfoot research in the community authentic and credible.
This is Bigfoot Crossroads. My name's Matt, and I'd like to welcome Mark Dossett, director of one of my new favorite documentaries. I would say a Bigfoot documentary, but it's so much more than that. The Town That Cried Bigfoot. Man.
Yes.
So I've been in the Bigfoot world since literally just right before the year 2000.
Mm-hmm.
I was interested in the subject my entire life, but the internet side of things happened right around 1999 for me. And I have been an active Bigfooter since then. I've been doing this podcast forever now. And this is a Bigfoot story that I had never even heard about. How did you find out about this, man? I guess it was pretty famous whenever it happened. But like it flew under my radar. So how did it come to your attention?
Well, as we talked about a few minutes ago, I grew up in the 70s, and like many of your listeners in that era, I grew up with Bigfoot being on TV, In Search Of with Leonard Nimoy, came out in 77, the $6 Million Man. And I grew up in Virginia. It's more about the small town corruption that took place centered around Bigfoot. I heard a lot of stories about that, and those stories are still prevalent to this day. They're still going on to this day.
So this particular story happened in Weyburn, which is kind of in that same general area from what I get. So you heard about this event growing up?
Yeah. I mean, that and many others, for sure. Yeah, different types, yeah.
Were you into Bigfoot as a kid? Was this something that has always interested you?
Yeah, the $6 Million Man lunchbox. I used to watch $6 Million Man show, and that was the biggest episode where he fought Bigfoot. I remember people, one of my friends dressed up as Bigfoot for Halloween. In the movie, that's when I talk about when I said, you got to remember this is 1978. Bigfoot was everywhere, from movies, books, Halloween costumes, TV shows, lunchboxes. Yeah, Bigfoot was more popular back then than he is today. I mean, it was just all around. But it's grown in popularity now more so than I ever thought. I mean, I'm in Texas, and I mean, you're at a stoplight, there's a Bigfoot sticker on the back of an F-150 right in front of you.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it's everywhere now. So it's, and I've heard different stories from all kinds of people, from Florida to Virginia to Texas to Utah, all over. I mean, it's a big phenomenon.
So what was it about this particular story? Was it just because it happened to be from your area growing up and everything? What made you decide that you needed to turn this into a documentary?
The story, because it speaks to, even though it happened in 1978, it speaks to today, as far as small town corruption. I was just out at dinner last night with one of my friends, and we were talking about basically money and power will make anyone throw their moral compass out the window. I mean, sure. it'll, yeah. And you're seeing that everywhere. And I mean, from banks to governments to small businesses to local town people, what's taking place here should resonate now more than ever as well, because it's been going on forever. corruption and greed and power. And that's basically what that movie was centered around.
You took kind of what I thought was a unique approach to it. Was there really just that much stock footage from this event for you to use, or did you make that on your own?
There's a compilation of footage, kind of like, you remember Leonard Nimoy, the In Search of
course,
episode?
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Absolutely.
Okay. If you watch the first 3 minutes of that, when they're talking, they're using, it's like a docudrama. They're using reenactment to show, because obviously people in the woods didn't have a camera at the time,
sure.
They're trying to showcase somebody running from a Bigfoot or hearing a Bigfoot and running. Well, they had to go out and recreate that. So, I had to work with what I could work with, and the biggest thing was the legal backing I got from the Supreme Court ruling with the Fair Use Act, because this is a completely transformative piece of work of what you're seeing, where you can actually, as long as you could take a dishwashing detergent or commercial or whatever, and if you took that commercial and flipped that footage around inside out and you made it look like it was about some toxic stuff somebody was pouring on their dishes, that's a completely different piece of work than the Dawn original commercial. Yeah, so the Fair Use Act helped me utilize a lot of that footage.
And I assume being a professional video editor came in handy as well.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, a video editor, you're only as good as a video editor as you are a storyteller, because that's what you're doing. I mean, you write 3 movies. You write one on paper, then you shoot one out in the field with a crew of, whether it's 5 people or 500. But at the end of the day, like for Quentin Tarantino, his longtime editor, Sally Minky, that's where the real movie was made. That in that room, in a dark room with just 2 of them cutting and chopping and arguing over what needs to go where. That's where the real movie's made, is in the editing. So that's where the real story comes out, is in the edit.
The entire documentary is done in a way where it just all seems to be footage from the 1970s, basically.
Oh, ever from opening frame to the end credits.
One of the questions that's been eating away at me since I finished watching it is, all of this information in this documentary true? Did you take any fictional liberties in it?
Everything that you see, I'll say this, every word you see and hear in there happened. Is true. The reactions you see from the people, what they're, the guy in the truck talking about, hey, when we see it coming down the mountain, that's when we'll believe. But right now, I don't know what to think. That's a real reaction. That's real footage. That is exactly what you're seeing. But yeah, as a storyteller, you got to take certain liberties to make a story flow, for sure.
So let's just, kind of break this down as much as we can. So we've got this small town, Weyburn, Virginia. It's 1978. There's basically a sawmill industry there that's kind of the anchor of the town. And these family members, the sheriff and this other guy, this local politician guy, they kind of come up with a scheme to try and help each other out in this small town. They bring the politician to the town and they start putting pressure on this sawmill to try to relieve some tax pressures on the community and everything, and get this politician popular to boost his career, basically. And things kind of go south and the sawmill leaves town. We'll just say that much.
Right.
So then these 4 guys kind of come together and cook up this scheme to drive tourism off of the Bigfoot topic, because, as you were saying, at that point in time in the United States, it was extremely popular. And so they kind of cook up this Bigfoot scheme, and this plays out to be one of the absolute craziest stories I've ever heard. It's got so many different elements to it. It, like you were saying, it's so much more than just, the topic of Bigfoot, which is kind of the focal point, but all this stuff going on around it is crazy. Which character did you find most interesting in this story?
Probably the sheriff, Sheriff Pruitt, because of the way, as it's said in the documentary. So he brings in Danny Shiflett, the mayor from Richmond, who was trying to climb up the political ladder there, and it just wasn't working. Too much competition, like you hear on the tape recordings that were made. And then you find out that he's not just a local sheriff from a small town. He happens to be Danny Shiflett's older cousin. And he's, like it says in the movie, he knew not only having the mayor on your side would make his job a lot easier, but he was also a family member and he was older. So he knew he could kind of manipulate him. He still had that older brother figure, I guess, from growing up from kids. He knew he could kind of bend Danny's way to what he needed done. And he totally utilized that to his benefit. So yeah, Sheriff Pruitt it's not only the bad guys that are interesting. I mean, look at No Country for Old Men, Shigar.
Yeah.
The main, he was, to me, he was one of the more interesting characters in the movie because he was so mysterious and he was, he was pretty evil dude. So for me, yeah, Sheriff Pruitt was the most interesting.
You could especially hear in like the recorded conversations that they had between one another on that initial phone call, how it's kind of like, Shiflett had already kind of taken that position as like the younger family member and kind of just like initially got talked into doing it. He didn't really want to do it. He was kind of questioning it. And then the sheriff's is just like, yeah, I'm going to lay it all out for you. This, you're sucking where you're at. You're not going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
He starts kind of bullying him into doing it to begin with.
Well, he once again, he used a manipulation tactic because he framed it as, hey, look, you're a small fish in a big pond. You come to Weyburn, you're going to be a big fish in a small pond. And, you're going to that's what drove the lumber mill out of town, was a quick tactic to try to get the lumber mill to take up the taxes for the people. And everybody likes that. So, right away, he's going to look like a hero. And it kind of backfired on him. And that's when they found themselves like, holy crap, now what do we do? The new guy just drove the number one industry that I think it was like 60% of the town was employed at. Now they're out of a job because the lumber mill up and moved. So now it's like, holy cow, this is way worse than he ever thought could happen. And then that's where, the Bigfoot idea came in, and for a short time there, saved the day. Which
was interesting because we're talking about a town of what? I think you said 1,400.
Yeah, 1,400.
Yeah, not a real big town, but not a small town. Kind of a bigger small town, I guess, is the correct way to kind of frame it.
Yeah,
but you've got the mayor, the sheriff, and then they incorporate the town attorney, Lester Clemens, and then this local mechanic kind of makes up the what were they called? The Fraudulent Four?
Yeah, when everything started to come into light, the newspaper. I mean, they always kind of name, the Memphis Six or whatever. Yeah, they
right.
They threw the Fraudulent Four moniker on them.
So that was kind of one of the interesting things about it. And like, I'm it's so difficult because I want to talk candidly, but I also want people to watch the documentary.
And I appreciate that.
Yeah. I don't want to tell the whole story, but damn it, it's such a good story.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
So like, I am going to skip a little bit ahead because like, this was one of the things that was like, okay, well, are these just all just good old boys that grew up together? Like, why would they kind of, this is like a major deal to bring somebody in on. I mean, you're talking about defrauding the entire town that you live in.
But once again, that's what makes, for me, that's what makes Sheriff Pruitt so interesting. He knew he could do that. It wasn't like he just, let me go grab that random politician who's not doing it. He grabbed a family member.
Yeah.
He's known his entire life. So he knew what he was doing. And he knew, like, okay, Danny's going to, I'm not under his thumb, he's under mine.
Right.
That's why in the movie it says, he knew having the new mayor as your cousin would make any sheriff's job easier.
And then, their initial plan, their initial scheme didn't have anything to do with Bigfoot. Bigfoot was just kind of like a random idea that came up during a conversation.
And once again, that goes back to $6 million man. That was Lonnie when they're in the barn, and his son, pretty much like me and my friends had, the metal lunchboxes. His son had a $6 million man lunchbox, and on the side of it was Steve Austin, fighting getting ready to wrestle a Bigfoot, and Bigfoot being all over TV with Leonard Nimoy in search of, and books and movie posters and Halloween costumes. It wasn't too hard to figure out, well, people are really buying into this stuff, or fascinated with it. And so, I guess it wasn't too much of a stretch for Lonnie to throw that out there. It was literally sitting on his workbench right in front of him.
I guess it's because, I was born in the late 70s. I remember in the early 80s watching reruns of In Search Of and seeing some of those reenactments and stuff. That's kind of where Bigfoot came onto my radar.
Oh, me too. Exactly.
But like, I don't think about it being such a huge deal in the 70s. Now, if you look at Bigfoot reports, you do see a spike of Bigfoot sightings in the late 70s.
Willow Creek. I mean, as they mentioned in the movie, Willow Creek blew up big time.
And I never even thought about that. I mean, obviously anybody that looks into Bigfoot knows that like Willow Creek is like the Mecca of Sasquatch, like that. Obviously, yep. Different towns like this one said that they were, the eastern capital of Bigfoot. Willow Creek would definitely be like the capital of Bigfoot globally.
For sure. Yeah.
But I never thought about what that actually meant for a small town, the tourism and everything. I know they have, still to this day, like parades and Bigfoot days and stuff like that. Oklahoma has taken on a moniker as well. And, there's Bigfoot festivals here, but I never really think about the actual, impact that these things had on these small towns like that, but it was huge.
Yeah, I mean, if your listeners, when you watch the movie, I mean, you can pause it. Google Weyburn, Virginia. There's even they don't have pictures of it, but supposedly, according to the website, Waylon Jennings on tour actually stopped there, stayed at the Holiday Inn.
Wow.
Like, I guess he was, so yeah, it was a pretty big deal.
So these guys, the general idea was we're going to hook some Bigfoot stuff and we're going to turn this into a tourism spot, kind of centered around Bigfoot. And it took them a while to get the ball rolling, but eventually they did. And it was crazy because we're talking about late 70s, early 80s at this point. And, there's that one clip of that old timer, sitting in a cafe or whatever, just talking about tourism has hit our town, and we're just going to have to deal with it and we're going to have to learn how to adjust to it. And he's talking about 1 million people being there, over 1 million people.
1.5 million. Yeah.
In a town of 1,400.
Yeah. I mean, here's what's interesting. They have Bigfoot festivals like in West Virginia and Pennsylvania or whatever. And I found one that had, I think the town was so small, it was under 1,000 people. And either it was last year or the year before, they had 30,000 people. And I'm like, where do they had to stay like, way down the road. I mean, where were they sleeping? But that's what was interesting. If you saw in the movie, it really boosted not only the local economy, but I mean, even farmers were turning their back 40s into makeshift campgrounds.
Yeah.
So they were probably charging, I mean, I don't know what a campground cost back then, probably $8, a spot. And I mean, they have acres and probably, 300 acres or whatever out there of farmland. And they're like, yeah, pitch your tent up, you're good to go, and just made it fun for everybody.
Well, I mean, I don't even know what I couldn't tell you what the largest draw is for a Bigfoot festival or conference in the United States. But the one you just specifically mentioned, I mean, 30,000 seems like a lot of people to me. That's a huge turnout for an event. And we're talking, 1980 drawn 1.5 million. 30,000 is nothing compared to that. Yeah. So everybody in the community was making a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean, do you remember the one part where the guy with the canoe rental, where he says, he goes, I don't even know how many people we have on a weekend, but I can, or how many people visit, but I can tell you we have, I think it was 2,500 canoes going to water on a Saturday morning.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to be on a river with 2,500. I mean, you're pretty much walking from boat to boat, right?
You guys are just sitting in the water.
Yeah, and it makes LA freeway traffic look nice, I guess. Yeah.
Another thing that I found interesting, and again, I'm not trying to give too much away, was how they figured out that they kind of had to make it bigger. Each thing that they did, each step that they took, they realized, oh, well, we have to go bigger than the last time. And eventually it gets to like violence, they get to violence with, the Bigfoot hoaxing and everything. And that was the catalyst that kind of tipped things over for them and finally made everything work out. And then they all start cashing in on it. Interestingly enough, I don't know if I would have chosen their particular avenues of side businesses or whatever. I know the mayor's chili cook-off seemed to go over pretty well. Said it drew 3,000 people for a chili cook-off. I've never seen that before in modern times.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you can't really, that's a different thing too. Modern times now, I mean, back then you people did do stuff. Those 2-week vacations you get at your job were a big deal. A lot of people now will take 2-week vacations and just not even leave home.
Yeah.
And I don't blame them. They're just like, hey, I just want peace and quiet. That's what I need. But back then, people, they were looking for anything to get away. And think about it, that's a cheap vacation especially if you have kids, it's the coolest thing in the world for kids.
Oh yeah. And there was a lot of kids in that footage, like the tractor rides and the pony rides. I mean, like you said, they're cashing in any way they could. And yeah, it was drawing families. There was that one lady that said that they came all the way from Chicago.
Yeah. And they even asked, I said, do you believe? And she just looked right at the camera and said, yeah, I do.
So part of this scheme that they put was a $15,000 reward for, I guess the capture or bringing a body or whatever. And, very similarly to what happened down in Falk, Arkansas with, the legend of Boggy Creek and everything, you did have teams of men showing up, hunting this thing, whether it was to cash in on the prize or make it safe to be outdoors again, who knows? But you actually had this in the document. It drew the attention of the Hells Angels.
Yeah. Once again, those guys they were always looking for something. I mean, they had their hand in everything, and, I'm not a Hell's Angel. I wasn't one, but I'm speculating.
Right. Not speaking on the behalf of the Hell's Angels.
Yeah. I'm not stupid, but I would imagine that they were like, hey, we're probably, maybe they were headed through that way anyway. And they're like, well, let's go stop in Weyburn. And, what a great excuse to go out and shoot guns like you see in the footage, which I don't think Bigfoot had much to worry about. They couldn't even hit that beer can floating around in the ditch.
Well, it was funny because all the local, backwoods guys are all out there with their rifles and shotguns, and the Hells Angels show up and they're like shooting semi-automatics and automatic.
Yeah. Oh yeah. All the stuff you're not supposed to have, probably.
Yeah. Another thing that I thought was interesting was that the town even went as far as putting out a tourism commercial based on Bigfoot and broadcasting it in the area.
Yeah, that was pretty much based off of the Hells Angels, because they knew they got a lot of notoriety when they showed up, because people were like, they were leaving, and they were like, this isn't good. Like we want everybody to come, but we don't want everybody. I mean, they were fighting on the side of the road. They were just randomly shooting everywhere. So, they had to create a more family friendly image and fast, to kind of curb, because, they got a lot of news footage when the Hells Angels showed up.
Yeah. Cause it just went from everybody needs to hunt down and shoot this thing, we're trying to kill it, to come see Bigfoot. Come to Weyburn.
Yeah. You sound like you did the voiceover. Yeah, that was great.
Did you do the voiceover on that?
Yes, that was me.
No way.
Yeah. And once again, through AI helped a lot for sure. Yeah.
Wow.
That was me.
It sounded a lot like Sam Elliott.
No, I can promise you that was not.
No, okay. Well, I knew it wasn't Sam Elliott's voice.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of characteristics. It was very similar, like to a Sam Elliott type delivery, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. And that was by design. I mean, once again, let's not forget, I'm a storyteller.
Right.
I'm a video editor. I'm a filmmaker. My first movie came out in 2013. I just got the rights back to it. It was called The Torment of Lorien Cullum. It was an 80s horror style throwback movie. Now I'm going to get that put back out there. But yeah, I'm a storyteller at heart. So yeah, the narration is key to telling the cohesive story. If you don't have that,
no, for sure.
Yeah, it just looks like some random footage slapped together because you really don't have context of what you're seeing and why.
The footage at the end of the narrator, was that you, or was that some stock footage that you used with AI?
Well, Matt, I'm going to play the devil's advocate here. What do you believe?
Ooh.
What do you honestly believe? I'll answer your question. I'm not dodging it. I hate when people do that. You know, I'd piss myself off if I didn't. But I'm redirecting to see what you say before I answer that.
Okay.
Well, give me your honest opinion.
My honest opinion was it was stock footage.
Stock footage of the narrator?
No, of somebody. I don't know who, in a recording studio, and then AI was used on the mouth.
Yes, AI was used on the mouth, and once again, it had to be because I'm the narrator. So that guy, who's clearly was filmed in the 70s, because that's real 70s footage. I mean, everything you're seeing is real 70s footage. But I manipulated. That was an Easter egg. There's Easter eggs. There's an even Easter egg in the title, The Town That Cried Bigfoot. That tells you a lot right there. But there's Easter eggs, especially on the very end, right before you see the credit roll up. But yeah, there's Easter eggs all through this.
I'm going to have to go back and rewatch now.
Yeah, and that's good. That's good. It's kind of like Fight Club. Honestly, I think if anybody that's already seen it and they're hearing this, it's definitely worth to go back and rewatch, because now you're like Fight Club was, to me, it was way better the second time around because you're like, oh, Ed Norton and Brad Pitt are the same guy.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
You know?
Yeah.
And so then you started to look for like, oh, that's why every time Marla Singer came in the room, they both were never in the same room with her because they couldn't be because they're the same person. So you start to see all that stuff. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a sucker for the whole vintage retro look anyways.
Me too. I mean, we grew up that era. So
yeah. And the idea to make a modern documentary, but the entire thing is presented as a documentary from that era. I mean, yeah, I'm all in. I'm absolutely all in on that.
Well, here's the thing. And I'm just going to say it. I'm not going to try to preface this with anything, but a lot of Bigfoot documentaries you see, I mean, if you've seen any, I promise you've seen them where it's just drone footage over a forest in the daytime and somebody trying to make you scared or trying to create a scary vibe, and it just doesn't work. Because what you're seeing doesn't match up with what you're hearing, and you just see shots of the woods, and then you see like nothing is going on. And 9 times out of 10, there may be a story about what somebody heard or saw, but there's not I mean, like this narrative has an arc. You know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, the town went from being okay to nothing, and then to holy cow, now they're like the Bigfoot capital of the East Coast. And then, you know, in the end, it goes from bad to worse.
Yeah, it gets dark. It gets real dark.
Yeah, it definitely gets dark. Yeah, very dark, for sure. Yeah, but good catch on that on the end. So back to your question. Yeah, that was me manipulating the narrator. I didn't have to put that in there, but I couldn't resist putting that in there. That's why I did that.
Yeah, it was definitely a good thing to add in there. I enjoyed that part.
Yeah, he literally looks at the camera and he tells the audience, "Look, I get that all this is hard to swallow, but try this one on for size." And then he cuts to current day. The exact same story, pretty much you just saw, is happening in Oklahoma.
Yeah, I know it all too well. I know it all too well.
Yeah, so that's why that was one of the reasons this story was so important to tell for me, because it's going on. What you see is 78, but it's going on now.
Yeah, in the area of Honubby, Oklahoma, where we have an annual Bigfoot conference. There's a story there, man. Like, oh man, I know that there's some people that listen to my podcast that are actually involved in this, but sorry, this is the way it works. Factions, have like kind of feuded with one another, and the festival that takes place down there was taken over by a different group, basically, and the other group started a bunch of internet rumors, and then they rebutted, and you had all this drama going on, and they're trying to keep it going and trying to keep it all held together by duct tape at this point. And I wish them the best of luck. But then on top of that, you've got this, Oklahoma state representative, not a real
Humphrey, isn't that his name?
Yeah,
William Humphreys or something.
William something Humphreys.
Justin. Yeah. That's the footage.
Yeah. And he came up with this brilliant idea to actually open up a Bigfoot hunting season in Oklahoma and sell hunting licenses and permits for this. I don't know how serious he is, but he's doing it, and he made a little bit of a splash, with it and everything. I don't know if it really helped Oklahoma tourism or whatever. I know he made a run on a few podcasts out there talking about it.
I mean, I heard about it in Virginia. When I started this
there you go.
years ago. I mean, I'm in Virginia, and I knew who this guy was. So yeah, he's making a bigger splash than you guys think, for sure.
Apparently so. Yeah, I don't know that it's necessarily paid off for him, but hopefully he won't take it to the lengths that these gentlemen did.
Yeah.
I'll just kind of leave it at that, because like I said, I don't want to give too much away. One interesting aspect about the dynamic of these guys, if you take out Mayor Shiflett, who was the cousin that the sheriff brought in, the other three guys served in Nam together.
Yeah.
And like, we're already scheming back then and doing nefarious things, not to a huge extent, but they're, making money for themselves. We'll say that. And kind of had already created their own dynamic. And I'm going to guess that there's probably more to this story that you weren't able to uncover. I'm going to guess that the attorney and the sheriff kind of got in their positions not by accident. I'm going to say that they've probably been working together over the years to get those positions.
Oh, for sure. I mean, that's all I could uncover was what you saw. But yeah, you're dead on for sure. I mean, there was definitely a lot more there. And I'll tell you, I served in the military 4 years, and I saw things that people were doing to make money off the side through the access of what they had access to. It's not uncommon. People don't like to hear about it, but yeah, there's, it's the military is a business, and on small scales to large scales, things are manipulated for financial gain in all different aspects, for sure. I saw it firsthand.
Another interesting thing is whenever this all went down and it was kind of uncovered and everything, I believe it was the attorney, Lester Clemens, bailed, took off on his family, took off on everybody, and went on the lam. And the last time he popped up on the radar was in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. That's one of the reasons why I had to throw the Oklahoma thing in there at the end of what's going on where you're at right now.
I mean, you don't think.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe great grandson or something. Who knows? That blew my mind when I heard about the Oklahoma thing. I was like, wow.
I mean, there's no such thing as coincidence, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty compelling. That's all I'm going to say. Pretty compelling.
One final thing I want to hit on with the documentary is towards the end, and again, we're not going to, I'm not leaking, but at the end, there's an incident that takes place, and you referenced a few eyewitnesses that stated they saw Bigfoot involved in that incident. Was that true?
The reports from the linemen and the guys on the lake.
Yeah.
About that's what I uncovered.
Okay. And then we have, sworn testimony by the sheriff that some of the stuff that was turning up in the community in reference to tracks and howls and tree knocks and things like that, he says they were not responsible for all of that stuff.
Yeah, and that's some of the Easter eggs that you got to look at too. The pictures of the tracks. If you look at them and I think I edited them in there side by side so you could tell they don't match up.
Yeah,
like he states in court. Like, so he's like, we did these. Like, he's owning up to it because he's caught.
Yeah,
he's saying we in fact did this stuff. And then when he talks about the tree knockings in the house, he's like, I don't know anything about that because we needed stuff that could be documented the next day on, not every farmer is walking around with a tape recorder, so they thought of it. They were smart enough to think about that. So they're like, well, we need something that they can document. And, a Polaroid instant camera was pretty prevalent back then. I had one as a kid. So yeah, they left stuff they could take pictures of, and they were pretty smart about it that the locals could, here, I got a picture. It's as big as my son's skateboard, like you hear in the movie and you see. But yeah, the tracks don't match up, which is pretty interesting. So that begs the question: well, what left those? And
then you had some of the locals claiming that they saw the thing when they were out there searching for it.
Yeah, it's you saw earlier in the footage, earlier in the movie when that one guy talking about he saw it throwing a tire at 40 cars.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, okay, all right, I guess. So we're the other 40 people that were there,
Right.
And then, the narrator actually even says, and some people just wanted to be on the news, and that's true with anything. You can have a bank robbery and somebody's like, oh, they got a TV camera, and they walk over, hey, I saw the whole thing, they want their 15 minutes of fame. That's not uncommon.
No.
Yeah, that's kind of the culture we live in now.
And that's part of it. And that's probably why this story actually did fly under the radar on me, because especially in the Bigfoot world, I know people, I used to be one of these people that spent countless hours and countless dollars out of their own pockets out there researching, investigating claims, trying to find evidence, trying to get proof that Bigfoot's real. And a large part of that community does not want to draw any attention or any light to the hoaxes and to the people that lie. But I think that's part of it. I think that's part of the story.
Well, I think, and thank you for bringing that up. That is one of the things that I also wanted to do with this. That's pretty much the underlying theme for the entire movie. Is it should help better serve the Bigfoot community by not critical thinking, by way of use of critical thinking, not taking things at face value, because what that'll do, and it's not saying you dismiss something, it's just, just analyze what you're looking at and don't take it at face value, and it adds validity to the research. It keeps it authentic and it keeps it respected. But if every time there's a blurry camera footage of something moving around in a bush and everybody's like, oh, that's Bigfoot. After a while, people are like, you can't even tell what that is. But, and I'm saying this to every single person listening to this, myself, the most compelling footage that I've ever seen in, as long as I've been alive, is that Francis Peak, Farmington, Utah footage on YouTube of that Bigfoot or whatever walking upright up the side of that snow cliff covered mountain. Have you seen that?
Yes.
Where my only thing, if you want to go, well, that's not real, I would say, well, that has to be AI. To me, it doesn't look like AI, but the deepness of how deep that snow is, the angle, the altitude, and the way that thing is moving, to me, that's the best footage I've ever seen, for sure. Because people ask me ever since I've made this, do you believe in Bigfoot? Do you believe in Bigfoot? It's like, I've never personally seen one in person, and I've seen a lot of footage that I just kind of laugh at. But I'll tell you right now, that footage of the Francis Peak footage, that's pretty compelling. That's the one I personally will share with anybody. And I'm doing that right now. I'm saying, please, if you haven't seen that, I'm sure your listeners have because they're into Bigfoot. But to me, that's pretty compelling. And if somebody has, I would love to hear if somebody explain that away. I'm all for it too. But for me, that's pretty compelling.
Well, I think it's interesting that, this was a situation where people were like intently and purposefully hoaxing. However, you did have a number of townsfolk that claimed that they witnessed the creature, that they saw the creature. And, they all had their own stories to go with it. And you're looking at this panel of different individuals and you're like, okay, well, apparently they're lying. But, they really don't have any reason to, other than you're saying like they just want to be on camera or have a story to tell or whatever. And that was in the late 70s. I think that's more likely to happen today with the anonymity of the internet, especially, where people can do it, get a little bit of attention, and then realize, hey, I got away with that. I'm going to do it again. I like that feeling, and they get that adrenaline rush off of it. And I think that's an important aspect to Bigfoot or any unexplained topic. I think we have to recognize that and we have to acknowledge that, because I used to debunk stuff. I used to, anytime I could prove that somebody was lying or making something up, I felt I need to put it out there and let everybody know. I need to alert them. And the reason I did that wasn't to argue against Bigfoot existing. I've had my own personal encounters. I've had my own sighting. I know Bigfoot's real for myself. Do I expect anybody else to believe me? No. And I would implore them not to believe me just because I say so. Go find out for yourself. But with that being said, whenever you are looking at, 100 different videos and you're saying yeah, I can explain away 99 of them. That means one of them you can't. That means there's still truth out there. If I can debunk anything that's fake that comes out, and I'm telling you, yeah, I can debunk it if it's fake, but here's some that I can't debunk. That's a stronger argument to me for the existence of these things than anything else.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And that's one of the things I wanted people to take away from this movie. Is yes, critical thinking only benefits the Bigfoot community. It doesn't harm it in any way. It keeps it respected and authentic. And that's kind of like, which I thought was very interesting, is when you saw where the sheriff was like, hey, we laid these tracks. I don't know about those tree knockings in the house. We didn't do that because we didn't even know how to replicate it, much less if anybody would be able to record it to post as evidence later to help drive it. But we knew Bigfoot tracks in the snow will last at least a day and people will get pictures. So yeah, critical thinking is big when it comes to this stuff. Absolutely. You can walk outside at night and look up and go, oh my gosh, is that a whole army of drones? It's like, well, listen, it sounds like helicopters. Oh yeah. Okay. I wasn't paying attention to that part, yeah, there's nothing. You have to have critical thinking for sure.
So is this a subject that you're done with, or do you think you'll do any future projects in this?
I'm not going to, I would never just, I'm not going to say never, but I already have some different scripts that I'm working on for fictional movies, not the documentary side. That is the one thing that we all went through 5 years ago, with being locked in our homes and everything, through the legal backing of the Fair Use Act. That enabled me to make this documentary without having to go out and film, and I can't go back in time. I don't have a time machine. So that was challenging too. I was excited about making a movie that put you from the moment it opens up, you know, with Weyburn Sheriff, what's your emergency? I wanted to put you back into Weyburn from the get-go, all the way up until the very end, and keep you there. So that was a pretty cool deal for me to be able to do through the use of the Fair Use Act.
And you pulled it off successfully, by the way.
Thank you, man. Thank you. I appreciate that. I
really enjoyed it. I mean, there's a lot of documentaries out there, Bigfoot and otherwise, you know, and I run across a lot of documentaries, and I watch a lot of documentaries. I rarely talk about them, and a lot of them, it's kind of like cookie cutter, so to speak, like you were talking about, you know, the drone footage and all that. You know, I would probably do that same sort of thing for my own YouTube channel. I'm not sure I would, you know, try to put out a mass marketed documentary in that style, but a lot of people have. And if that's your thing, great. But it's not something that really grabs my attention personally. But this was something that I was pleasantly surprised with. I was not expecting that approach. And I thought it was awesome. I thought it was very entertaining. And like I said, it's now one of my favorite documentaries. The story is absolutely insane.
Yeah, well, thank you, Matt. I mean, that's a huge compliment. Seriously, I mean that. But yeah, I would have never have made this if the story wasn't there. If the story wasn't as interesting as you pointed out, and all the twists and turns in it, I would have never have made it. I had no interest in making, you know, just videotaping somebody just talking about what they heard or what they saw. I wanted a story that definitely had an arc to it, that was worth telling.
So do any of your upcoming fictional works involve in Bigfoot or anything else unexplained?
The next one that I'm working on, I'm planning to shoot here in Texas, out in West Texas, around the Fort David area. That one has a supernatural kind of vibe to it. It's a Western. So yeah, there's a kind of a supernatural vibe to it that will kind of mixing with genres it's going to be a lot of fun to do. But yeah, there's no Bigfoot in that one.
Yeah, supernatural and Western sounds really cool though.
Yeah, I kind of I remember when I saw, do you remember, what was it called? Cowboys and Aliens with Harrison Ford and Daniel Craig. Yeah, there's parts of that I loved. And then when the spaceships and all that stuff towards the end, it kind of pulled me out of it. But that kind of resonated with me about, I kind of like mixing genres, you know? And I do have one, now that I think about it, I wrote a couple years ago. I don't even know if I want to say this because somebody might make it before I do. But
don't say anything you're not comfortable with.
No, I'll say this: nobody's going to make it the way I'm going to make it. They don't know the story. But yeah, I've always wondered, like, you know, American Werewolf in London was a great movie growing up, and I've always, well, you know, if werewolves have been around, you know, they've been around for all the decades and eras, so. I was thinking of mixing a werewolf in the Civil War.
Oh, yeah.
Which would be kind of, because you're out in the woods, you're out in the middle of nowhere, you know, and you're not surrounded by cannons at all times. Sometimes there's a troop can be 4 people, you know, right. That's pretty much what constitutes. So you could have 4 guys out in the woods that are fighting something that they don't even know what it is yet, you know, like dog soldiers.
It could be 4 guys in one state, and they'll get orders. Hey, take this message to this general over in this other state.
There you go. There you go.
You're walking.
Yeah, yeah. So mixing genres is something I'm pretty interested in doing to keep it interesting. But it's honestly, for independent filmmakers, it's getting harder and harder to get things out there, and where it's even worth the time and the effort. Instead of just putting it up on YouTube and just going, here, everybody enjoy, you know?
Yeah.
I personally, because I'm old, I personally miss the days of Blockbuster, because the cool thing about Blockbuster, here's the difference between Blockbuster and Netflix and Amazon right now, is back in the day, the store had what it had. It didn't have this infinite supply. And like when Titanic came out, there was like 80 copies. So the whole back wall was Titanic, but you would go and look for other movies. And if they didn't have the one movie you were looking for, well, you're like, well, we're here. So it kind of forced you to pick something you probably normally wouldn't pick out.
Yeah.
And then you end up loving it. Like, Reservoir Dogs came to mind. I wasn't looking for Reservoir Dogs. I was looking for something else. And then that was out and I picked that up and I ended up, that became a huge Quentin Tarantino fan,
Yeah. And most of your choices were based off of cover design.
And I actually, when Film Laurels, the little Sundance, the film festival gold leafs actually meant something.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, all right, well, this must be kind of cool. But yeah, it's just a different time now. It definitely is. And that is another reason why I wouldn't have made this movie, because there's so many. It is flooded, and some independent films are great. Some are not. Some, my first film had major issues in it. I mean, the first part of it, which I'm going to re-release, I'm going to cut out. It looked like a bad 70s porn in the beginning, just by the acting. It's because we were rushed. It had nothing to do with the actors. It was because we were rushed. But I wanted to put out something that, like, will this hold people's attention? Because now more than ever, we have shorter attention spans. And so that's why I opened it with the cow and the creek. I got a dead cow and blood all over the side of my house. That's in the trailer.
Yeah.
And by the way, I did release 2 weeks ago. This is an Easter egg. I released a trailer that opens with Orson Welles, and he's standing there in a black hat, and he says, "Ladies and gentlemen, by way of introduction, this is a film about trickery and fraud and lies." And then it cuts to the trailer.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So there's an Easter egg right there that tells you everything. It goes back to what I'm saying about the Bigfoot community, critical thinking. Use of critical thinking will keep the Bigfoot research in the community authentic and credible.
One final question. Have you had any of your own experiences with the unexplained, whether it be UFOs, ghosts, whatever?
Yes, I've had something a couple years ago that was pretty traumatic, and I'll say this. And I'm really glad you asked that question, Matt. I when I was younger, I went to Catholic school. I went to Baptist church. I dated a girl. I was out in Utah and didn't go to a Mormon cathedral, but I was around Mormons. I've been around a lot of different religions. I've always believed in God. I've had my struggles with God, as far as, why do good things have to happen or why do bad things have to happen to good people? And some things just don't make sense. You can't wrap your head around it. And you're like, well, I struggled with it. I struggled with it. But I will say this, to answer your question. A couple years ago, I had some things that were very hard to explain, and it terrified me. And I'll say this. I never used to talk about praying a lot. I would talk to God in my own times and terms, but I was never a big church guy. I'm still not a big church guy as far as like the pageantry of religion and what takes place, for that hour on Sunday.
Right.
But I talk to God now more than ever, and I will say it's given me peace with what I've experienced a couple years ago, because without it, it was pretty traumatizing. I don't want to get into it too much, but I will say praying now has taken that trauma away, and it's helped, and it's made things a lot better and easier to understand for me, for sure.
That's awesome.
And that's just me. And I am not, listen, please, anybody that's listening, I am not preaching. I am just sharing. That's all. I'm sharing my own experience, no different than you sharing your experience, what you were telling me earlier before we got on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just, for me, that's how I was able to make peace with it. But yeah, I have experienced something that was terrifying that I really can't explain. But I found peace with it through actually my connection with talking with God. And it's helped. It's helped a lot. Like it helped in ways that I can't even, I can't explain away if I wanted to. And I'm like, yep, somebody's looking out for me. So I kind of answered your question, but kind of didn't. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, I'm not gonna let it go. We're gonna have to talk privately about it.
Yeah. We can do that. We can do that for sure.
Mark, I appreciate you coming on here, man, and talking to me about your documentary. I know I had to twist your arm a little. I'm glad you changed your mind, but I really enjoyed it, man.
Yeah, me too. It was awesome. I look forward to hearing what people have to say about it, especially after they watch it or just listen to your podcast. So thank you for the opportunity, Matt.
Oh, for sure. The Town That Cried Bigfoot, Mark Dossett. I'll put a link somewhere on probably the Facebook page again. I posted the trailer there and a link to it before, but I'll do it again.
Thank you.
Really enjoyed it. Highly recommend it. Check it out. Have you had your own encounter with Bigfoot or something else you can't explain, and you'd like to share your story on Bigfoot Crossroads? Email me at bigfootcrossroads@gmail.com. Check out the website, bigfootcrossroads.com. You can find links to social media, past episodes, merchandise, everything you need, all in one place. And until next time, remember, there's something in the woods.